we're going to continue a little bit about what we started in episode 191 about using a DiSC assessment to help your relationships. But this time we're going to make a twist and show you how to help your business become a stronger and more efficient, more productive, especially when it comes to dealing with your team. And especially if you're working as husband and wife, we kind of delved into that on the more the relational scale. And even if you don't have employees, but you have contractors, or you should be hiring contractors, or picking that first virtual assistant or first executive assistant, whatever the case may be, vendors, yeah, you're right, honey, customers, we all have to communicate to somebody during the day. And at the end of the day, right, building a business is all about relationships, all about building relationships, building strong relationships. So knowing how to communicate with each other, and because we're all different, a lot of us have different communication styles. So we want to kind of help you dig into this. Thriving in Tandem. It's a podcast for you, the married entrepreneur that wants to win in business and marriage at the same time.
Welcome to Thriving in Tandem.
We should have hit record before we even started, because we had this whole conversation before we started about, Kaylee is always asking the same question. What's my communication style? I tell her the same thing. And I'm sure if you heard episode 191, you can probably say what she is, because we said that, right?
It's just not on the tip of my forehead, on the tip of my mind.
Forehead. Okay, so if it was on the tip of your forehead, honey, that means you have to walk around with a mirror.
Yeah, that's true.
So
I meant the tip of my mind. Like, I don't go around thinking about it.
The tip of your tongue.
That'll work too. Tip of my tongue.
Okay. So let's review a little bit in case you didn't listen to episode 91, but let's quickly review the DiSC profiles. And again, you may be more comfortable with Enneagram or Strength Finders. There's a number of these personality and Strength Finder assessment tools, and they all work, right? And so pick one that just works for you. We use DiSC, one, because it's been around for a long time. I've been using it when I was in my corporate space and all that, so I'm just very familiar with it. So it's very natural. There's only 4 quadrants, so it makes it easier.
You don't have 100 Enneagram numbers.
Yeah, Enneagram has, 50 or some on. Anyways, so DiSC. So it's an acronym, DISC. So D stands for dominance, I is for influence, S for steadiness, C for correctness. And so what I'll do here, since I think, especially because we have a YouTube audience as well now, that I'm going to show the screen a little bit so that if this is going to work. Is this going to work? I don't know. I'm not sure if this is going to work. Anyways, yeah, I think this will work. So we're going to look at the DiSC profile, and this is more in chart form. Yeah. So some of you probably look at like the definitions and all that, but
so it's a chart. So you guys probably already know what letter Robert is on the DiSC.
So D's for dominance, and it's your typical, you're extroverted. You're kind of what we would think of as a born leader. You say what's on your mind kind of thing. When they're very high D and low in all the other personality profiles, they can be more almost like a narcissist. So they're just they're more the shoot, aim kind of person as opposed to aim, shoot. Mm-hmm. Okay. I also extrovert, also kind of the born leader. They're more the charismatic type. People really like them. They want to follow them. And
who's an I, honey?
That's you, honey.
Okay.
That's you. And I's are more people-oriented versus D's are more task-oriented. Okay. And then the S's are those steadiness. And if you can see down here, it's kind of the golden retriever. You're going to do. You're a thinker. You're more of an introvert, more of an analyzer, but also more people-oriented. You're more about feelings, how people feel, how you feel. And then there is the C, also an introvert.
Which is Robert. Yeah, very analytical.
Analytical, again, more task-oriented than people-oriented. And so, and there's some nuances here. So I'm more of a SC or CS. So I'm very much more, on the introvert scale. But I'm a kind of a combination of task-oriented and also people-oriented. Mm-hmm. So I like people, but I also can do tasks.
People are always surprised to find out you're an introvert.
That's because that's the S part. I'm also very people oriented, right? And Kaylee's more of the IS. And so she's kind of got a little bit of both, more the extrovert and introvert qualities, right? Because you always talk about you may be considered an introvert, but then yet you need your downtime. Well, that's because you have those introvert qualities, right? But you're also very people oriented, not so much task oriented. So you got
laughing about
because
that?
You have a ton of ideas, but somebody else has to execute.
Well, because you're great at that, honey. That's because you're a C.
I know. And so
I keep you supplied with plenty of ideas and dreams and brainstorming.
Yeah. And so I'll just click the screen sharing a little bit. So that's a little bit about us, but you can see here, we don't just look at whether you're we all have a combination of all four, right? But then you usually look at the top two scores, and those are the areas where we tend to flip flop. So you got to look at that. So you just don't look at your top scores. So you got to look at the blend, because you'll see how, depending on situations, you flip flop. And so how does that help in business? Well, especially as a husband and wife team, like many of you listening are, it's important to understand, we shared that I'm more the analysis person, right? More the metrics and all that stuff. Kaylee, and I'm also task oriented, and Kaylee's more people oriented. She's got a ton of ideas, and she's got a lot of feelings and all that, but she's not task oriented. So you remember early in our consulting business when I had her do QuickBooks. So hopefully you can see how that creates tension. Conflict. So she's not the analysis person, and and she's not task oriented, and so therefore you're naturally going to see how that can create conflict.
Yeah, because there's no room to create color and be creative when you're doing bookkeeping.
And so I would be, if you just between the two of us, right, you would probably say, Robert, you should be doing QuickBooks. And I said, yeah, you're right, but I didn't want to do it. But we've kind of, found Kaylee's lane, which is more about, I didn't call her a salesperson. I didn't tell her to be a salesperson, because that would have definitely, she would definitely crawled in the hole. So I ain't doing that, right? I just said, go make friends.
And I said, no, really, what do you want me to do?
I said, go make friends.
Like, right? Make friends?
Because she's more the extrovert. She's very people oriented. And again, eyes are more the charismatic type. So people are going to want to follow her, right? So great salesperson, right?
Well, I never thought of it that way, because it's just my second nature, just meeting people.
And so, and it's interesting how you wanted to, because when we went over these definitions a little earlier, because I was saying, you have some S quality, some of those introverted qualities, which is passive, thinker, process oriented, and reactive. And you said, I don't like that.
I don't want all those. Can I change those for some other ones?
But then when we're talking about for me, she's like, oh, those are great.
Yeah, because that's him.
So anyways, that's how this is how our household goes, right? So anyways, so understand, as husband and wife, you need to understand, and just not husband and wife, but as you're building your team, you need to understand what's your strengths, what's your weaknesses. So, for me, even though I was in 20 years of sales, I'm an introvert. So, which means it can be exhausting for me, right? But as I'm building a team, it's great to have someone like my wife to go out and lead the charge in sales. And now what's one thing she does is gets us on podcasts.
And we've met so many fabulous people, because I'm always usually at the end when I meet people, I'm like, so who do you know that I need to know? And I've met so many great people, you guys, you wouldn't believe it.
Yeah. And so as husband and wife, you need to know what's your strength. So I'm more the process. I'll create the concepts and the procedures and the systems and all that stuff. And Kaylee can go out and get leads, which is interesting. On this chart, it says D's and I's are leads, has a little box as leads. So it's really more they're leaders, but also in the context of sales, she gets leads, right? And then also not try to stick your spouse into, or even for you, not to get caught up in things that you're not gifted in.
Like giving me 203 tasks to do when I'd rather be out meeting people, or I probably won't get them all done.
What do you
He'll
mean?
be
What do you
upset.
mean you probably won't?
There's a
Won't.
small probability I
A
might not get
small?
them all done.
A high probability. But I mean, you can get things done, but it has to be in your sweet spot, your zone of genius, right? If it's like, hey, go meet the next 15 people,
Mm-hmm.
to go meet some fun people,
Mm-hmm.
then that fits her because eyes are also all about fun,
Oh, yeah. It's got to be about the
right?
fun. But if you tell me, here's 200 things I need you to go research on, I'm like, oh, gosh.
And so it was a kind of,
That is not fun to me. That's fun for you.
and it was interesting. We were just met up with some old friends of ours that were in town, and they're retirement and age. And then Vic, he's like, he works for Pinehurst, which is an exclusive country club. And if for you golfers out there, they just had the men's U.S. Open played there in Pinehurst, and so he drives around this trolley that transports guests to the different golf courses and around town, kind of thing. And he's an eye. He's fully an eye, right?
Yes.
He's a real eye. Yeah, he's an eye. So he just loves to meet people and talk to people. So that is like his dream job, retirement job, at least retirement job, right? It doesn't pay well, but he don't care. He gets, but he can play golf for $5. So, I mean, there are some, obviously it doesn't pay a lot, although he gets tips. So I think he does okay there, especially at a place like Pinehurst. A lot of people tend to give good tips, but then you also got the perks of playing the golf course for only $5, which, for any of you who know golf, and especially Pinehurst, you're talking, $500 rounds. Easy. Oh yeah, easy. And so that's a big money saver. Only have to pay $5. I mean, that's a money saver period, because even just a basic public course is going to cost you $40-$50, right, around. So huge cost savings. But anyways, I remember doing his interview. He said during the interview, they're saying, "Oh yeah, you can. Here's some potential jobs you can do." And he says, "Oh, the trolley. Yeah, I want to do the trolley, right? Because it sounded like fun." And he said, "I can work 3 days a week." And he said, "But if the job becomes more of a job and it's not fun anymore, I'm out of here." Is what he told him.
He was honest.
He was honest. And the guy said, "Okay, I get you. I know you." So anyways, all that to say is, when they're in their sweet spot, when your team member or your spouse is in their sweet spot, they can be working and be very productive as long as it fits them, right? Their personality and their work style. And so, and also this is how also I'm learning how to understand how to phrase things.
Because I know with you, I have to call things projects, because you love projects.
So if I told Kaylee, go get 15 leads, right? That sounds more like work to her.
Yeah, that does not sound like fun.
But I say, go meet 15 fun people. Go meet 15 interesting people, right? Then all of a sudden it becomes more fun. Versus, yes, for me, she says, "Oh, honey, I got a project for you," right? Which, because I know what she's trying to do now, it doesn't work. She thinks it works. She thinks she's smart, but I know what she's doing because she says this.
Projects, honey.
I really don't like projects. I like the end result. I like what the projects can lead to. So it's really about, what does a project do, right? Because if it's a project around the house,
no, forget it.
It ain't going to get done.
And that's a task, honey.
It's a task, but it's also a task I don't want to do because it's frustrating. Like being a handyman around the house is frustrating. So
you told me that early on.
Yeah, early on in our marriage, she thought I was going to be Mr. Handyman, Mr. Fix-It. And I told her early on, and she didn't believe me early on. I said, no. I said, we hire people for that.
I had to learn the hard way.
I said, I work all day, and the last thing I want to do on a weekend is to fix something. Work too hard to then work on weekends. And so we pay somebody. And it's not only good for my well-being, but it's also good for our relationship.
Yes, it's good for my well-being too. So I have a question for you.
Okay, here we go.
So being that you've been in sales for marketing your whole career, seasoned ones that are high performers and achievers, what is the best personality, or is there one for sales off the DiSC profile?
I mean, the go-to, if you're just looking strictly at the numbers, at the definitions of DiSC profile, then you would say the I, or even the D, because they're extroverted, they're good around people, and they're going to get things done, right? They're achievers. They're your typical prototypical high achievers, and they're extroverted. The S's and the C's are your introverts, and people you normally would think they're not going to be good salespeople. But as I said earlier, I'm an SC, and so I'm an introvert, yet I was a high performer in sales. I won trips, I won best performers multiple times, and all that. And so you can't just put everybody in a box. It doesn't mean you can't be a good salesperson. So how does an introvert be a good salesperson? Well, number one, you also have to understand that just because you're an introvert doesn't mean you can't sell.
Mm-hmm.
Because, especially in pharmaceuticals, knowing the biology, knowing the research, knowing the data is actually very beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a C.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what else you're really good at? And
Yeah.
I don't know which is the best out of the DiSC for top salespeople, but you're a great listener.
Yeah, and introverts tend to be good listeners because they're not that extrovert that needs to talk.
Mm-hmm.
Right? D's and I's sometimes get caught up in talking too much.
And we could talk somebody right out of a deal.
And I've seen that. One of my first sales trainer when I was working with Coca-Cola, literally, he talked himself out of sale when I was on a sales training call with them. And I thought, wow, I didn't think that was possible. I saw it in action. And the other aspect of being a good salesperson, what made me a good salesperson, because as an S, I am more people oriented. S's are more people oriented, and they're about feelings and emotions and their connection.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can sense, sense people's feelings and perceptions about something. And then it was really about being comfortable and learning how to sell, because really sales can be learned. It's not necessarily tied to a specific personality type, but you also got to understand how to use your strengths in sales. And so in my career in sales, I've seen the gamut of all 4 personality profiles types be high performers. And so definitely there was those D's, high D's, and some of our friends that are high D's and were high performers, and the I's, and there's some that were more S's and some more C's. And so even though I's aren't necessarily data driven, there were still good salespeople in pharmaceuticals. And why was that? Because, well, at the end of the day, you don't have a lot of time with physicians to go too deep into data. You just need to know the right pieces of data to be able to present, right? And so anyways, so does that answer your question?
Yeah, so they're all good. There's not like when they're hiring, there's not like one personality type from the DiSC that they're looking for. It's right. All of them could be a good salesperson.
And just like a leader in business, there's a whole gamut. I mean, I have in our book, I had some examples of leaders, great leaders you would know by name, from Elon Musk is a high D, to Richard Branson's a high I, and Pate the Google guy is a high S, and then Bill Gates is a high C. So they run the gamut of great leaders and great entrepreneurs. And so what happens though is, with every personality type, so you got your strengths, but you also have your weaknesses. And so why is it important to understand that part too? So you know what kind of team you want to surround yourself with.
Yeah, I find that the real successful leaders usually have a team that's different than them.
Yeah.
And I know some that are really struggle with being a leader. They don't want anybody to be any smarter than them. They want to hire people that think like them, and they really seem to struggle.
Yeah. So, the best leaders I've seen are the ones that are aware of their weaknesses, because we all have them, right?
And they're not afraid to admit it.
Yeah. And so what they do is they know how to build a good team, as opposed to the ones that just build a homogeneous team, ones that act and think like them. Well, then you don't really have growth, because then you don't have any differences of thought, but even work styles. Because I mean, as we kind of looked over the different personality types, obviously you need a complementary mix of all 4, right? You can't be all leaders. Somebody's got to do the work. You can't be all, those extroverted, charismatic types that everybody wants to follow, but then nothing gets done, right? So you want to have a good mix. So as you're looking at your own team or building your own team, you want to look at that. It is definitely helpful to use these these tools, and it's just a tool, right? These are not absolutes, but at least it gives you a baseline of who you're hiring or who you have on your team.
Mm-hmm.
And then assess, right? Start to, as you're interviewing people, even your own team, like we always recommend, basically like re-interview your team.
Yeah,
And
because seasons can happen or changes can happen, and somebody might have been happy at this one position, and later on in life, they're like, they want to try something different.
yeah, and so I would definitely, and in the link there's a link in the show notes for you to take the DiSC profile for free, and you can also have your team take it,
Mm-hmm.
or your spouse take it, so you kind of know where everybody is, and then see where you might be complementary, where you might be, where you might also create some friction,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll know why you have friction. So one of the D's and S's, for example, they're kind of, if you looked at the chart, they're kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. They're in the different corners, and they're very opposite. D's are very to the point, process driven or task driven, and don't care about feelings.
And they wanted something done yesterday.
Yeah, and they don't care about feelings. S's is all about feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And they need time to think. And D's want an answer like now, right? And S's need time to think about how it's going to affect people. And so those two personality types, right, can rub each other the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're a D, you've got to understand how to tone it down and ask for the input and how they feel. And just say, hey, can you just get to the, you're going to have to be politely and get to the point, as opposed to them sharing a big thing. But also, they could be, S's and C's could seem not lazy, but it can take a long time, especially to what a D is concerned, take a long time to make a decision, because there's so many things for them to think about. So you're going to have to, give them, or say, hey, okay, when can I have this information by, or this decision by? We've got to give them a deadline. Otherwise, it's going to go on forever, and it's going to frustrate you, right? So don't just say, here, give them a task, and then, you come in an hour later and expect it to be done. It's not done. You get frustrated, and then you keep going, checking back in them. It's not done, and you get frustrated, more frustrated. So you have to come up with a timetable
Mm-hmm.
for them, and something where you both can agree upon.
Well, and this kind of reminds me, we had a client that was a very high D, and she was low on empathy, and she was doing HR. And so we're like, and it was really causing a lot of friction with the employees. So I thought, well, maybe we should move her into a different position. Her husband had a lot of empathy, and I think he was a C, right?
It was I think it was kind of an IS, if I remember
IS.
correctly. So more people oriented,
So
right?
we
It's also
ended
very
up,
charismatic.
Mhm.
People liked him. Everybody liked him.
So we ended up moving them around in different positions,
Mm-hmm.
and it seemed like it worked out really well for everybody.
Yeah. And then S's, I want to kind of wrap up what I was talking about, these opposites, right? Because S's can feel intimidated by the D's,
Mm-hmm.
because they want everything right now, and they want a solution right now. So S's, or anyone communicating to D, what you got to understand is, a lot of times they feel you're going to feel like they need a decision right now, but they don't necessarily need the absolute solution right now, but they need some kind of expectation of when you're going to make a decision, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So regardless of your S, C, I, whatever, the best way to communicate to D is say, hey, if you need time to think about it, say, hey, give me 5 minutes, or not 5 minutes, give me, a day, or I'll get this information. If it's going to take a little bit to work, I need to the end of the week, or whatever it is. Tell them when you can get this thing done, and then tell them why it's going to take this long.
And I was surprised what a difference that made, because they always wanted everything yesterday, and it's like,
it seems like that, because they want an answer, but we assume the answer is the absolute solution. They just need an answer.
Well, and I think it eases them too if you say, like, you know what, can I get back with you and give you that information in 2 days? Then they usually are okay with that.
Well, just like you, because you're extrovert and all that, and you're more of that action oriented, right? You want things quickly,
Mm-hmm.
even though you don't want to feel pressured yourself, but that you want. But anyways, when we, and then regardless of what personality type, when we just don't leave people hanging, in general, and we say, hey, give me 5 days or give me a day or give me 2 days or whatever, and this is why I need this time to get things done or get the solution, and then yes, it eases the other person's mind, because now we're not just thinking and guessing of when we're going to get this
Yeah, you're
thing
right.
done.
You're not leaving them
Right?
hanging.
But D's are very easy to talk to, because you just tell them like it is. Tell them what
You
you're thinking
like
about.
D's.
Yeah, tell them what you're thinking about and why, and they're absolutely open to it. They're actually probably more open to alternative solutions and the way you might be thinking about it than other people, because as long as you can back it up with some kind of fact, then they're open to exploring a different way of looking at things.
And you have to get to the point.
Yeah. And the beauty about D's is because they tell you like it is, and they tell you what's on their mind, you don't have to guess what's on their mind. And so you can give them exactly what they need because they already told you what they need, especially if you're in sales, right? And so, you know, again, looking at these personality profiles, again, looking at your strengths, but also looking at your weakness. We just had a new client we just onboarded, and he's a high I. Everybody likes him, right? And then he just got some feedback from his team that they said that the team said that they feel intimidated to
He's
talk to
not
him.
approachable.
He's not approachable. Yeah, he's not approachable. And he's like,
I'm really
I'm
approachable.
approachable. I'm approachable. And we're like, you are in a general sense, because you're so fun loving and you're so gregarious and charismatic that it's easy for people to approach you, meaning say hi, kind of thing. But when it comes to sharing their feelings and their thoughts and wanting to get some empathy, so to speak, because high eyes can also be very highly optimistic. A lot of times, what they'll do is they'll sugarcoat things. If someone's kind of sharing their heart, for example, someone on the team has an issue and they're kind of sharing a problem, an I and sometimes even a D is going to kind of gloss over it because they're very optimistic and say, oh, it's going to be okay. Right. Versus what they want is some empathy.
Right. And we want to be heard.
And so that's what unapproachable means in this context, is because they don't think you're going to understand or be empathetic to their situation. So therefore they feel you're unapproachable. Right. So understanding that, but kudos to him for even getting that feedback.
I mean, it's huge that people were felt that comfortable to be honest with them,
And so when we explained this to him too, about what unapproachable meant, then he go, oh, okay, that makes sense. Right now he's got the awareness to then say, okay, how do I deal with this? Right. Number one, if these are kind of personnel issues, that maybe someone else in the team handles this. I don't know. He's got an office manager. Maybe the office manager is better equipped to handle this and all that. Also, there's still going to be times where people are going to pour their heart out to him. And so he's got to be conscious about slowing down and not try to sugarcoat it over, right? So just being aware of how he gets perceived. And so that's big.
So we were just going over this with our clients the other day. They need to hire a person. So this is a great chart, the DiSC, to look over and to see what kind of personality type that you might need, as opposed to, oh, my son needs the job, or my aunt or my uncle, and we just put someone in the position. We've done that way too many times, and then it doesn't work out. And then we're like, oh no, what do I do now that he or she is not performing, and it's hard for me to move them along because they're part of the family or a close friend. And we didn't really set them up to succeed to begin with, because they weren't the personality style that we needed to get the job done.
And these things it's not just personality styles, but it's work styles too. Right. And so, family, that's a whole nother can of worms you're opening up here. But when it comes to family, you do have to lay the ground with our expectations. Like, look, we'll interview you, but we got to let you know if it's not the right fit. We're just not going to give you a job just because you're family, right? It's got to be a good fit, because what happens is if they're not a right fit, not only they're not going to be very productive at the position, but it's also going to affect the company culture, because people are going to be upset because they're not pulling their weight. Because when they're not pulling their weight, it affects other people, right? Because somebody else has to pick up the slack.
Affects everybody.
And then they're just going to look at, oh, he's just a family member. That's why I got the job, and he's lazy, he's not doing the work, and I got to pick up the slack, or other people have to pick up the slack. So that's not healthy for anyone. So, but even if they're not a family member, like when you put the wrong person in the wrong situation, it really affects the culture of the organization, right? Because the same issue, somebody else is going to have to pick up the slack for their inability to do the work, not because they're not a good person, but it just not might fit their personality and work style, like my wife handling QuickBooks, right? Like, so it's not because Kaylee is not good at something. She just might not be good at QuickBooks, but we just have to find the right spot. And so when you're reassessing even your existing team, that, if you find someone that's not in the right position, you might not just say automatically, "I'll get to fire this person." You might say, "Can we reposition people?"
Because if we don't make a good decision at the beginning when we hire them, it can get very costly.
Yeah.
To have to retrain people.
So I hope these 2 episodes help. This episode and episode 191 about how you use the DiSC profile, DiSC assessment. One, it's build self-awareness about yourself as a spouse, as a parent, and also as a leader in the business. But then how are you better able to communicate with your spouse, your family, anybody, and it's including in business, and how you can use these as a tool, right? These are not absolutes. These are not going to give you the absolute answer, but at least it'll give you a grounding, a framework, a foundation of how to look at yourself and your people, your team, and do you have the right people in the right seat?
Well, and it's helpful because sometimes I've looked at the different personalities and I'm like, okay, this is how I need to communicate to them.
Yeah.
As opposed to trying to impose my communication style onto somebody else and not coming out well.
Yeah. So hope this helps. And so please go ahead and share this with another entrepreneur that needs to hear this. And we would love a review.
Yes, please.
And until next week, God bless. Thank you for listening to the Thriving in Tandem podcast. Please visit our website, marriedentrepreneur.co, for a variety of free resources to help your marriage and business succeed.
And feel free to leave us a review and share this episode with another married entrepreneur. That would mean so much to us.
See you next week.